So, Molly, we can get into your new piece and how it fits into all of this, which is that whether it's abortion or Obamacare or January 6th, these issues that Joe Biden is very happy to have raised by his likely opponent, Donald Trump, in the 2024 campaign.
Yeah, I mean, so my thesis is basically that, and we can go back to 2016 and talk about that. We spent so much time covering the stakes of a Hillary Clinton presidency, right? 90%, 78%, 99%. Trump has no path, right? That we didn't spend enough time covering we covered the odds of this Hillary Clinton presidency. We didn't spend enough time covering the stakes of a Donald Trump presidency. And I think that that's what polls do. They shift the narrative in a way that's not necessarily so helpful. And they drive a lot of news cycles. And we've seen that they're necessary. And I'm not even talking about the accuracy of polls. I'm talking about them more as just sort of the wrong engine for a lot of reporting.
Well, I mean, it's a complete obsession. And we around the table at Morning Joe into the summer and fall of 2016 would say that Donald Trump still had an outside chance of winning. And the hatred and the anger, even when we were being critical and saying we didn't want him to win, I mean, the obsessions on the polls and these meters, like 98.4% and 99%, those needles, the ones that went to Auburn having a 99.9% chance of beating Alabama.
Okay,
exactly.
wow.
Roll Tide.
Brought it right in there. Okay.
It's great. Had to do it, 4th and 31. So, but you had that obsession. And then I remember Mike Barnicle, as we got down the home stretch of the polls, and I remember seeing a poll that showed Joe Biden ahead by 13 points in Wisconsin. And I just tweeted out at that moment, I don't believe any of the polls. And sure enough, they really were. A lot of these state polls, especially in the upper Midwest, way off. And then you have this insanity. And this gets to the point of Molly's piece. On election night, several weeks ago, we had real American voters going to real voting booths. And we were going to have all the real data from a real election for networks to go over. And another network, whom we won't name, decided that on that night, they were going to drop a poll at 7 p.m. when the voting booths closed, and they could have actually reported on real numbers. And what did the poll show? Joe Biden, it's terrible. It's the end of the world. By the way, all of these polls that are like, you read the headline, it goes, oh, the worst news ever for Joe Biden. And I'm thinking, oh, my God. He was riding his bike in Delaware, and a comet dropped on him, crushing him to death. And then I open up the link, and I look at it, and they show me 3 polls where the President of the United States is within the margin of error of a crazy, dangerous man who isn't even really in the front of people's minds right now. And Mike, I just sit there and think, wait a second. This network had real human beings to talk about, but instead of dealing with voters, they wanted to talk about a poll that would push their narrative about how bad Joe Biden was doing, when in fact, voters from Virginia to Ohio to Kentucky overwhelmingly affirmed just how well the Democrats were doing swimming against the tide.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about polls right now, and it's the only interesting thing, is that it's like taking a picture of a sunset, each poll. There's going to be another sunset tomorrow. Things change, and nobody's paying attention, really, other than people like us, to a future election a year away. The interesting aspect of the election, I would submit, is that we have one political party, the Republican Party, seriously interested, seemingly from top to bottom, in marching this country backward. Their principal interest is in taking things away from people, things that people have grown used to living with, like Obamacare.
Mike, that includes, Mike, they have already taken away a constitutional right
50 years
that women had for 50 years. Now they want to take away health care guarantees that Americans have had for a dozen years.
Correct. And later this week, we're going to have a reconvening of the House Committee on Weaponization of Government. And what that will mean is they'll go through a list of things, again, that people have gotten used to living with, that people like, benefits that people like. And they'll be looking to cut back on those benefits, reduce those benefits, sometimes eliminate those benefits. It's the only time in our history when we have had a major political party. It used to be a major political party. Now it's a crazy political party, the Republican Party, seriously interested, again, in marching this country backward.
And Molly, as you point out in your piece, we don't have to go back very far to show that the panic about polls was unwarranted. You go back a couple of weeks to some of these special elections that we saw, gubernatorial elections, or just go back a year ago to the midterms where there was talk on election night of a coming red wave. Obviously, that didn't happen because of the issue of abortion and democracy, two things that, again, will be on the ballot next year.
And both those things polled fairly poorly.
Right.
You'll remember right before that election, people were saying, what's Biden doing, going out there and talking about democracy? People aren't interested in that. So I would say, and I think Barnacle has a really good point, the polls are shadows, not substance, right? This is this Daniel Bornstein idea from the 60s that you can't, these are not, they're pseudo events. They're not organic events. And so you should treat them as another data point. I mean, I'm not saying to ignore all polls. I'm just saying that they shouldn't drive coverage the way they often do.
Richard, what's your sense of how foreign policy might play a year from now? Obviously, the war in Israel is top of mind, particularly a lot of young voters who say they don't like necessarily the way that Joe Biden is handling this and handling the relationship with Israel. Obviously, Ukraine is still there. You know, they usually say that foreign policy doesn't decide a domestic election, but what's your sense of where it may play this year?
I think there's an enormous gap between the impact that foreign policy would have on the election and the impact the election will have on foreign policy. Latter far, far greater. Consequences of this election, if it is President Biden versus President Trump, would be enormous. They're not on different 40-yard lines. You've got President Biden on a 40-yard line. You've got Donald Trump in an end zone. Fundamentally different approaches. I think in terms of the election, I think right now it probably hurts the president a little bit. His focus on foreign policy, I worked for 41 when he was president. Americans often don't like a president being focused on foreign policy, even if he's successful. And that's what happened to George Herbert Walker Bush. I think also there's problems a little bit in the Democratic base. So one of the reasons I think the White House would love to see things calmed in the Middle East is the president can say, I helped calm them, and then he can put all of his energies and be seen to be putting all of his energies on the home front.